RTD reveals its proposed temporary service cuts. They'll impact tens of thousands of Coloradans, and RTD admits not all this service is coming back. Some people don't like how school performance is evaluated. Let's look at whether the state's new plan really changes anything. A word about the words that got a talk radio host kicked off the air. And a look back at some of the most memorable weather we've weathered over the last decade. That's next. RTD is preparing to make sweeping cuts to bus and light rail service, acknowledging that some of the less used routes might not come back after these temporary cuts. We're getting our first look at route-by-route details on the cuts that will be presented to RTD's elected directors tonight. And our Jennifer Meckles has been talking with them about the expected impact. Jenny?
Hi there, Kyle. Well, the core of the problem here is RTD is short-staffed. They're down about 60 rail operators and 80 bus drivers, and these people that are working mandated 6-day work weeks to try to keep service at its current levels. So RTD's solution is proposing these service cuts to try to bring down some of those service levels until they can get their operators back up again. So let's look at some of the weekday numbers first. They've broken this down by bus lines and rail lines for us. Looking at the weekday, RTD is proposing discontinued service to 6 of their 140 bus routes and reductions to several more. And we tallied that up on any given day. That's about 20,000 boardings meaning taking a ride. Now, to be clear, though, of that large number, 2/3 of that is the mall ride. They're looking at taking those 90-second intervals up to 3 minutes on the mall ride. And as far as the light rail is concerned during the weekday, we see a significant impact on the R line. They're changing the frequency up to 30 minutes, so a longer wait time on the R line. Now let's look at some of the weekend service changes, specifically on the light rail. You'll notice the H line frequency going up to 30 minutes on the weekends as opposed to 15 minutes between trains. They're discontinuing, this proposal discontinues weekend service on the D line on the weekends. So a lot of changes there on the train under these proposals. One other thing I want to mention, they talk about those special service rides, people going to the Rockies games and the Broncos games. You know, those aren't every single day rides for people, but that's tens of thousands of people on like a one-time service, if you will. So we're still kind of digesting what all these changes look like, but it's bus and it's train. And one of the questions asked to RTD today was, is this going to be enough? Is this really going to fix the problem long term?
I think this is a good start. I think we don't want to go too far. We want to stabilize the system, and we don't want to cut it so much where we start impacting the system in a negative way. So it's, for lack of better words, a sweet spot that we think needs to be maintained at this point. Cutting too much will just, it creates more unintended consequences, and that's not where we want to be.
So none of these changes happen tomorrow, Kyle. This is something where we go through these conversations, these meetings, but if any of these proposed changes go into effect, it would happen in May 2020. And I asked what would happen as far as anything going back online, any of these services that have been cut. And they said that first, they have to get their operator levels up to where they can manage these numbers. There's a number of other criteria they're trying to meet, making sure these things don't disproportionately affect people in various communities, low-income people. And then at the same time, they want to maintain service. So let's say they get those operator numbers back up to where they need them. They want to make sure they can keep something in service at a certain level for a certain amount of time before anything goes back to the usual.
And I mean, as you mentioned, these cuts would go into impact in May. They adjust service annually anyway. So I wonder if we're kind of getting sucked into spin by calling this temporary, because yes, it's temporary, but they make changes all the time. And as you said, if the situation doesn't improve on their end in terms of riders and revenue, then the cuts aren't going to come back.
Right, and some of these lower performing lines, they said it's very likely that if nothing improves, they'll just stay gone, not come back at all.
Yeah,
so
nothing temporary about that. All right, Jennifer Meckles, thank you very much, Jenny. There has long been grumbling about how our state evaluates public schools. Critics are now looking at a new law that does give a nod to their concerns, but perhaps not much more than that. This is a complicated system, but our Anusha Roy can explain.
The state faced another wave of criticism about how it ranks public schools after the Department of Education released their newest list, saying most districts stayed steady in their rankings, around 11% improved, 20 districts dropped.
What are the mental, social well-being of the students?
For Tiffany Choi with the Denver Classroom Teachers Association, there's too much focus on standardized testing and not enough attention on things like teacher-to-student ratios and taking into account how many kids consider English a second language. advantage.
Testing can give you information about what students are doing, what they're doing academically. It's not giving information about like the resources that are being provided to the school.
A quick check of bills signed by the governor this year indicated there's a new law on the books that flirts with the idea of addressing this.
It's acknowledging that local communities know their students best.
Lisa Medler with the State Department of Education said the state can now give some money to districts to come up with their own way of keeping an eye on themselves.
Something around student health, student well-being, student mindset.
At this point, it wouldn't change the way the state assesses a school, but the opportunity could be there down the line.
To determine whether there's some innovations that districts are coming up with that could potentially down the road influence the state accountability system.
There are a lot of ifs in the equation, while Choi is worried right now about families leaving schools with poor ratings that could impact how much money the school gets.
It addresses the measurement, but it doesn't address the actual outcome.
So the state said that they know there are concerns and that they're always open to listening, but at the same time need to comply with both state and federal laws. Now, a total of 5 grants will be awarded. That's for $75,000 for 3 years. And there's, of course, going to be a priority for rural Colorado schools because the state said they may not always have the budget to be able to look into this. So the idea is that the state would help them to kind of kickstart that program.
We see that with pilot programs like this, where the thought is, that maybe a fairly wealthy school district or maybe a very large school district can finance this on their own if they want to go down that route and they want to help out a few others.
Yeah, and the state even acknowledged that the total budget for this is a little less than $500,000, and they said, yeah, we know it's not a lot of money, but they needed to start somewhere, so this is what they're doing.
All right, thank you, Nusha. 710 KNUS Radio has canceled Chuck Bonnewell's weekday show after he wished this week for a nice school shooting to distract from impeachment coverage. KNUS had Bonnewell back on the air the day after his comments, but then canceled the show after his comments were reported on by 9 News and others. KNUS first, though, clipped that offensive comment out of the show's audio archives and then took him off the air altogether yesterday. Last night, Bonnewell tweeted a non-apology saying that he was sorry people took his comment the wrong way. Today, he acknowledged that comment was inappropriate. Well, there we go. We found it. And I think that's encouraging. This episode, with the talk radio host joking about a school shooting to distract from impeachment coverage, that episode has led us to a realization. We have discovered that there is a bottom, a depth to which you cannot sink without suffering consequences. We're at this time, especially when we talk politics, where cruelty and crassness has become sport, where saying mean things, bigoted things, vile things make some people feel big and strong, where hearing those mean things and bigoted things and vile things makes other people feel big and strong. But this situation, at least, suggests that our descent into cruelty as political philosophy has its limits. The limit is not white nationalism. Nope, that is still passed off as just being edgy. The limit isn't even straight-up anti-Semitism and neo-Nazism. The limit, it appears, is joking about a politically convenient pile of dead children. It's a shame that we've hit the bottom, but at least now we know it exists. Even Denver City Council misses the once bothersome bark of the watchdog that used to be the Denver Post. We saw Post employees protesting that paper's staff being cut down to a quarter of its former size by its owner. They even took that message straight to the Post owner, Alden Global Capital in New York. A former journalist who's now on Denver City Council is asking his colleagues to lend their voices in a symbolic move, demanding that Alden either invest in the Denver Post or sell it.
It may have no effect at all, but we have to speak up. You can't say nothing while the quantity, not the quality, but the quantity of civic discussion is diminishing. We're suffering because of that, I believe.
It at least prompts conversation. Denver City Council will have that and then vote on the proclamation next week. I want to take a moment to clarify something that was said in an interview here earlier this week. An artist dedicating an exhibit to people who are homeless in Colorado made a comment that 300 people died from exposure. The next viewer named Deborah asked us to check that claim, the numbers, and the timeline again. The Colorado Coalition for the Homeless told us that 233 people who were homeless died in the year 2018. The majority of those deaths, though, were classified as drug overdoses or medical issues. 8 of the deaths were classified solely as deaths from exposure. Moms are the pros at connecting online. Some dads here did it. then decided to branch out.
This isn't just some Facebook group anymore. This is a community outreach.
It's not just a poker game anymore. And a decade is about to come to an end. A decade that brought some wild weather to Colorado. We look at record-breaking tornadoes next.
Well, did you wake up with the sun this morning? Woo, it was a beautiful start to the day. Joe Drew capturing this great shot. The colors, phenomenal. Of course, you probably noticed all the clouds that we had. A very weak disturbance across the state, still sitting across eastern Colorado with that huge cloud deck in place, some clearing already. Further out to the west, we will be monitoring that clearing coming our way overnight. Temperatures, though, cold. We're down to 21 this evening. We'll stay in the teens in northern Colorado, single digits going way up high, but high pressure is around. You know the drill. That means some warmer and drier weather to come. But if you are traveling in and around the Pacific Northwest, it's going to be dicey. Really heavy rain and heavy snowfall, 1 to 3 feet possible across the Cascades. No snow in sight around here. Tomorrow, 49 with mostly sunny skies. We'll stay in the 50s along the eastern plains, 20s, 30s up in the mountains. So even folks up there kind of rebounding from the cooler weather earlier this week. Upper 50s into the 60s this weekend. Wow. We will start to cool things off, Kyle, as we head toward Christmas and possibly see 1 or 2 quick flurries on Christmas Eve.
Ah, great for the pictures to put on the gram.
Oh,
all right.
The gram.
The gram.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Always.
what the kids call it. Thank you, Danielle. You know, people love to talk about the weather. You know, you always look back and the weather seems like it was a lot better or a lot worse in the rear view. It's never the same as today's weather, never. Our meteorologist, Corey Rebenhagen, is looking back on the last decade of weather with facts, you know, not just our recollections. Tonight, it's tornadoes.
More than 400 tornadoes touched down in Colorado over this decade. 83% of those were east of I-25 and all but one were EF2 or weaker. That one hit on June 4th, 2015. It was the strongest and only EF3 tornado of the decade, but it also hit west of I-25, defying all of our state's tornado climatology because of its strength and where it hit. It touched down in Boulder County north of Longmont and tracked northwest into Larimer County. It was on the ground for 38 minutes, damaging several homes along its 6-mile path, but no injuries were reported. On the same day, a massive supercell thunderstorm on the Palmer Divide dropped 6 tornadoes near Simla. Some minor damage there, but again, no injuries. Colorado tornadoes are known by storm chasers for their photogenic beauty, and it's hard to beat the Ray tornado on May 7th, 2016. Even prom photographers couldn't resist a snap. This dusty twister received an EF2 rating with 130-mile-per-hour winds. Another EF2 tornado hit on the same day near Wiggins. No injuries reported with either of those. Memorial Day 2018, a day known to storm chasers as Colorado Tornado Fest. 15 tornadoes swept across the state on that day. One family in Kit Carson County witnessed 2 dirt-sucking twisters roll right past them at close range, while they hid in a nearby ditch. And this imposing tornado went right across the runway at Denver International Airport in June of 2013, just missing cars, planes, and travelers. But it did hit a weather station, registering a 97-mile-per-hour wind gust. That still stands as the record fastest wind ever measured in Denver. Meteorologist and storm chaser Corey Rebenhagen for Next.
It's really a shame that Corey doesn't get into his work at all. You know, I just feel like, I don't know, he could inject some passion into it. Most of Colorado's tornadoes happen between April and August, which means the first tornado season of the next decade is about 4 months off. I would bet every school out there has asked students to fundraise for this or for that. And then, you know, they set goals where adults promise to do goofy things if the kids meet milestones. Students at a school in Brighton are making the grown-ups pay. Bromley East Charter School in Brighton has about 1,200 kids, K through 8. The parent-teacher organization thought that a school-wide fundraiser for a spring event might bring in about $500 in 2 weeks, and they set up some prizes as milestones. Then the students blew that goal out of the water, raised more than $5,000. So Bromley East gets a parade of perks. The school's executive directors climbed up on the roof to greet students this morning. A teacher had a snowman in a tree shaved into the back of his head. And kindergartners got to shave the athletic director's head any way they wanted. Yep, looks about right. And the kids keep making the adults pay up. The top fundraising classes went to a movie today, and we're told the deans are getting slimed in January. Good work, kids. They used to get together to play cards and decided they wanted to do something more.
We're just a bunch of dads that wanted to get together and make an impact.
Meet the dads of Castle Rock and a holiday throwback from Denver, 1948. Next. Moms kind of own Facebook. But then there are the Dads of Castle Rock. Started as a Facebook meetup group and then evolved because the dads wanted to do more than hang out. They wanted to help out.
Good morning, Cody Nottingham here with Dads of Castle Rock. So the Dads of Castle Rock was really organic. What it did was it gave us an outlet as dads to come together and find other like-minded dads to just hang out. We're very young into this. It's only a 6-month-old group, and it's just every day it's evolving. We did get together. It started with beers and golf tournaments and cornhole and all this stuff, and somebody in our group said, hey, there's a bunch of unpaid school lunches. What can we do as dads together? And so before we knew it, in 2 days, we had paid off over $3,300 worth of school lunches. Well, at that point, our hearts are singing, and we want to do more.
This is a check for Facing Homelessness Denver.
It was beer and bags is what we were calling it, and all the money was going back to Facing Homelessness Denver. That was the first outreach.
Today we are having our bake sale.
The bake sale is predominantly where the funds for the Adopt the Family for Christmas is coming from.
We are raising money so that we can adopt families during the Christmas season to be able to provide them Christmas trees, presents, whatever it may be.
All right, guys. Unite.
All right.
So at Walmart, we did some of the shopping ourselves, but we thought, why are we going to pick out presents for them underneath their tree? Why don't we let these parents go and get to shop for their kids, but spend our money? Because it's not really our money, it's the community's money, and we're giving it back to them. We're the Dads of Castle Rock. We should be spreading joy, and so this was a good opportunity for us to do it, and now I kind of feel like we're hooked. This doesn't just have to be the Dads of Castle Rock. This could be the dads of any community.
It's cool that they're paying off the lunch debt too, although what exactly does it say about us as a society when we hold it against kids when they're not sent with money for food at school? So we remember a holiday tradition of old, Denver, getting lit in the 1940s. That and your feedback next. This Throwback Thursday, let's kick it back to Denver's holiday season of 1948. That photo is from 1948. Can you believe that? Next viewer named Roy said he was 2 years old when his father took this picture. Dad was in the Air Force at Lowry Air Force Base, so he had access to Kodachrome, the color film, in the 1940s. He's been lighting the city and county building for 87 years, since 1932. Isn't that amazing? From the 40s. That's beautiful. Charlie writes in, wow, Kyle. Thank you for your comments about the depths of decency. Let's hope we can begin to be a little more civil to one another. Eric didn't care for it. He said, you're a member of the Fourth Estate. You actually believe the radio host deserved to be fired? Tick-tock to your resignation. We've talked about this, Eric. Our free speech rights protect us from government action. They do not protect us from the consequences of our own stupidity. See you next time.